Hello, spooky repot friends. How are we? Thank you so much for joining me for our second episode of Spooky Repot with me for this year. I'm so glad that you enjoyed the first episode so much. Thank you very, very much for all of your kind comments. I really appreciate it, and I'm just so glad that you guys enjoy this kind of stuff as much as I do. If you missed the first episode, I recommend that you go watch it. We made a really creepy doll head planter, and I'll have that linked down below if you'd like to go check it out. Y'all know the drill by now. We are potting up a plant and we are listening to some spooky stories. I think for this episode, I'm gonna do the same as the last one, where I choose a story that I would like to tell you that's kind of on theme with the repot that we're doing, and then I'll jump into the viewers' stories that have been submitted. As always, thank you so much to everyone who has submitted stories. I really appreciate it. You can still submit your story, even if I don't use it this year. I could possibly use it next year, or if not, I would just enjoy to read it if you've experienced anything strange, scary, or paranormal. So if you would like to share your spooky tales, you can email me at spookyrepot@gmail.com. This episode's a little bit different because I'm not making a planter, I'm not crafting anything, I am simply repotting. But when I found this planter, I just thought that it would be perfect for a spooky repot. Love the vibes, love the theme, and it's so unique. I think that you guys are really gonna like it. I was gonna grab it and show it to you in this intro, but I kind of think it's more fun if you just wait to see the final result at the end. But do let me know your thoughts once you've watched the video, because I just think that it is the coolest planter ever. Alright, I think that's everything. Let's just hop into our first story. I've decided to start us off by telling you about one of the most famous alien abduction cases ever recorded. I've always been interested in this case, as many people consider it one of the most believable. This is the true story of Travis Walton. Our story takes place in Arizona in the year 1975 and follows 22-year-old Travis, who was working as a logger at the time. Travis and 6 of his crew members had just finished up a long, grueling workday and had piled into a truck to begin the journey back home. As they were driving, they noticed lights in the forest, but didn't think too much of them at first. The lights slowly captured their attention more and more, and they began to chat amongst themselves and question what they could be. Eventually, they decided to drive over and check out what the lights were, since it was so unusual to see anything like them in this quiet, forested area. As they drove towards the lights, they reached a clearing and were shocked at what they saw. There was a disc-like craft hovering above and lighting up the clearing. Travis, being a bit of a daredevil and incredibly curious, hopped out of the truck and ran towards the craft. The rest of the men in the truck were yelling at Travis to come back, but he was amazed by the object and just wanted to get a closer look. Once he did get closer, fear took over him and he decided to run back to the truck. As he turned and began to do so, a beam of light emerged from the craft and struck Travis, sending his body flying about 20 feet away, landing in a crumpled heap. Travis's coworkers were terrified after witnessing this and immediately sped off, thinking that surely they had just witnessed the death of their friend. They were completely distraught, but as they were driving, became overcome with guilt and decided to turn back. They arrived back to the clearing and found nothing was there. There was no sign of Travis. He was just gone. The 6 remaining men were panicking, fearing the worst for Travis, but immediately knew that the best thing to do was to notify the sheriff. So that's exactly what they did. They called the sheriff and desperately tried to explain their bizarre story. Of course, the authorities didn't believe them and began to treat the investigation as a missing person and possible homicide case. This would carry on for 5 whole days. They had search parties out and could not find any trace of Travis. The 6 crew members were under extreme scrutiny by the town and sheriff, as everyone thought they had created this elaborate hoax to cover up harming Travis. To expedite revealing the truth, authorities had the crew members take a polygraph test. They were all interviewed separately, telling the same story, and 5 of 6 of them easily passed. The 6th one didn't fail. That test just came back as inconclusive, and he was later retested and passed. The person who conducted the polygraph test was very good at their craft and said it would be extremely difficult for all of these men to pass his test if they had indeed harmed Travis. People were truly shocked at the polygraph results, and the story was picked up by national and international news stations. This story took the world by storm, and nobody knew what to make of it. 5 days later, Travis's brother received a phone call, and he was shocked to find Travis on the other line. He was alive. His brother immediately drove out to the rest stop that Travis was calling from. He found him disheveled and in a state of shock and confusion. He asked Travis what happened, but Travis wasn't able to answer him. He was just blank, unable to find the words to describe his experience. When Travis's brother told him how worried everyone had been about him, Travis was confused. He thought he had only been gone for a few hours, and he was horrified to find out that it had actually been 5 days. Travis's brother drove him to a hospital where a doctor declared him a little worse for wear, but ultimately healthy. They also did a drug test, and there were no drugs in Travis's system. They did note one mysterious, somewhat fresh puncture mark in the crook of Travis's arm that seemed to be from a needle. Later on, after Travis had some time to get his bearings, he was able to share the bits of his experience that he could recall, which involved strange beings with thin gray faces attending to him on a medical table. He also recounted human-like beings on board whatever craft he was on. Since they looked human, he desperately pleaded with them to help him, but something about them was just off. Eventually, these human-like beings put a mask on Travis, and everything went black until he found himself face down on the ground. This is when he got up in confusion and was able to find a rest stop with a payphone and call his brother. Travis had been inundated with press and media, police, and the general chaos of the town and everyone finding out he was home. He was eventually able to meet up with his coworkers and tell them his tale, to which they were shocked, but of course believed him because of what they had all witnessed. Travis and all of the crew members that were there that night have stuck to this story for nearly 50 years now. Between the 7 men, around 16 polygraph tests have been administered and passed. We don't know the truth, and are left with more questions than answers, but the story sure is an interesting one. Where was Travis for those 5 days? And would all of these men be able to stick to this story for so many decades to come if it were a hoax? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and let's move on to some viewers' stories. Story number 1. When I was a kid, my entire large family went to Maine together for a week of fun in the sun every August. When I was about 10, we started renting the house that we would use every year for the first time. The house was huge. It had 7 or 8 bedrooms on the second floor and 2 bedrooms with cots in the attic. We kids got to sleep up there, my cousin and I in one room and my brother in the other. The first night we stayed in this house, I was awoken in the middle of the night because a woman was stroking my hair. At first, I thought it was one of my aunts, but when I rolled over, it was a woman that I had never met before. I wasn't frightened at all because she was very motherly and kind. She whispered to me that she was just checking on me and that I should go back to sleep, which I did. The next morning, I relayed the experience to my family, who laughed at me for thinking that something that I had dreamed was real. Except, 2 or 3 days later, one of my aunts opened up the guest book and began to read the stories of the ghost that lived in this house. It turned out that the original inhabitants of the house had been a sailor, his wife, and their young child. One autumn, while the sailor was at sea, a hurricane swept through the Maine coast and inundated the house. They found the woman and her young child dead in the attic. She was known to reappear, but only to small children whom she liked to tuck into bed late at night. Story number 2. I've had a few strange and inexplicable things happen to me, and this is one of them. When I was 15, I was home alone with my little sister, who was only 6 years old at the time. I was heading to the bathroom right next to our staircase to wash my hands, and on my way there, I passed my little sister's bedroom. Her door was ajar, and I could see her legs and feet kneeling beside her bed, playing with her Barbies. I heard her making pretend voices with her dolls, and her legs were moving thoughtlessly. Nothing out of the usual. As I'm washing my hands, I yell out to her, "Lily, did you eat?" No response. "Lily, did you eat?" No response. Annoyed, I screamed, "Lily!" and I heard her faint little voice from downstairs respond, "What?" I stopped breathing. Again, this bathroom was right next to the stairs in an old creaky house. Not only was there no way she could have gone down the stairs without me hearing her, but because I was only washing my hands, the door was wide open the entire time. I would have seen her reflection go by in the mirror. To this day, I have no idea who was in my little sister's room. Story number 3. Around 20% of people have experienced sleep paralysis in their life. Some people believe that the experience of sleep paralysis can be explained by science, but many others think that something sinister or paranormal is at play. The one thing that people who have experienced it can agree on is that it is one of the scariest experiences that you can go through. My first stint of sleep paralysis was when I was 16. I remember lying on my stomach, facing the closet. I opened my eyes and realized I couldn't move. My head was fixed towards my closet, and the closet door slowly started to open. A large figure with masculine energy started walking towards me, painfully slowly. I remember looking away, then looking back at the figure, convincing myself that my eyes were playing tricks on me. He was still there, getting closer and closer. Because he was so tall and I couldn't move, I couldn't see his head or what he looked like. When he finally made it to the foot of my bed, I felt him reach his large hand, which was probably 5 times the size of the average human hand, and rested on my shoulder blade. When he touched me, I jolted up and gasped, and then he was gone. Story number 4. This story takes place when I was around 3 years old. It was just my mom and I living in our house at the time. I was often playing in my room with what sounded like somebody else. And when my mom would ask who I was playing with, I would tell her, an old man with a black coat and a tall black hat. That freaked her out, but she told herself it was just my imagination. This went on for months. Later on, I told her that I saw this same man standing outside my window trying to get me to go out. This is what started to concern my mother. She started to talk about moving out of the house, and the man didn't like that. He started to scare me now and was showing up at night when I slept. I had my mom sleep with me, and one night everything came to a head. We heard the doorknob rattling loudly as someone was shaking it to get in the room. The door then swung open and our covers came flying off of us, landing on the floor in the middle of the room. My mom then scooped me up and we left in the middle of the night. She went to get our things the next day, and I have yet to be in that house or see this man again. We have reached the end of this episode of Spooky Repot. I hope that you enjoyed. Please leave me a comment down below. Let me know your thoughts. I could not be happier with how this came out. I think that it looks amazing. The pairing of the linearis with this planter was actually suggested by my patrons, so thank goodness for them because it's too perfect. Like, it honestly looks like beams of light coming down or something. I love it. And I also am really into aliens right now. I've been watching, what's it called? Encounters on Netflix. It's so crazy, it blows my mind. Anyways, hope that y'all are able to sleep tight. Thank you so much for tuning in. And don't forget, there's still one more episode of Spooky Repot to come, so keep your eyes peeled. All right, have a great night and stay safe.